Welcome back to the GTN Show. This week, I'm getting personal and discussing my training. Not because I think you need to know about my training, because honestly, it's nothing special. It's quite boring, actually, but I actually want your advice. How do you fit your training in? Also, I'm going to be diving into drama from T100 Singapore and Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. We've got DNFs, speeding DQs, mechanicals, and the biggest winning margin in a T100 race yet. And because it's me, left for me today, we got some fun tech bits. You're in for a treat. Right, before we get into the meat of the show, a couple of things I spotted, and probably many of you also spotted these as well. T100 Singapore, of course, I'll get into all of the action from that very shortly, but some of you will have spotted this suit rolling around the course. Now, it was on a couple of athletes, Mika Newt and Max Stapley. It is a new Ryzon suit. It's actually their Verge prototype suit, apparently designed for brutal conditions, heavy air, no shade, and obviously Singapore was prime conditions for testing that. Obviously got a lot of you talking because it's, well, borderline see-through, but I've got to say, I think it's actually really cool. And I love just that pushing the boundaries in terms of performance, and obviously what you're wearing over your body is so important for that. I think it's wicked, actually. Other one, obviously we've been talking about Alex Yee and his training for the London Marathon over the past few weeks. He's part of this post over the weekend, Marathon Block Week 6. He essentially did like a marathon simulation day, 30-kilometre run, and averaged around 3:05 per kilometre for that entire 30k run, which he says was not too bad. Mental. Absolutely mental. Well, anyway, chatting about the wild training and numbers of Alex Yee sort of brings me on to something I want to chat about today in this show. Now, given I'm here on my own, I thought I'd get quite personal with you guys. Don't worry, it's nothing scary. I'll try not to overshare too much anyway. So, as many of you know, I'm a relatively new dad. She's actually going to be one in a couple of weeks. And my priorities are definitely in different places these days. And subsequently, I've actually found myself doing a lot less in terms of training, which probably sounds quite familiar to many of you out there. And generally, I'm fine with that. I absolutely love being a father. I love throwing a lot of my energy into GTN. I also have been renovating a house, which some of you may have spotted on social media, which has been tiring, but also a lot of fun. But how do you balance it all? And this is what I really want to dive into and talk to you guys about today. Many of us find ourselves just too busy to train and fit it all in. Are there some good solutions? Now, I love triathlon. I want to keep going, but trying to cram 3 sports is really hard. Sure, I could sacrifice family time, but currently I'm not prepared to do that. Now, it's taken me almost a year to figure out some of my own methods, which kind of seem to be working. But if you have any other words of wisdom or learnings that you would like to share, please do in the comment section below, because I'd love them, and I'm sure many others out there will too. So for me, I did find myself bumbling along for a while, clinging on to some hope that I'd be able to fit these great workouts in on an evening, on a weekend, and 9 times out of 10, they just would never happen because life would happen. It took me quite a few months to realise that I just needed to commit to the time that I did have available, however ridiculously short it was, rather than holding on to some hope for these longer workouts. Now for me, this was my 20-minute cycle commute to and from the GTN HQ that I do a couple of times a week. And once every so often, I might even run to and from work. And I really made them count. I take a hilly route into work and I kind of just go hard on the hills. The other is working out when you perform best and can get the most out of your training. Personally, I really struggle by the evening. I feel quite flat after work. So any kind of workout or hard efforts I do are in the morning. And I'll admit, this hasn't been the most structured training in the world, but I felt pretty good and surprised myself with how well I performed in the duathlon a few weeks back. So something clearly does seem to be working. And the other key has been being realistic about my goals. I hope that at some point, of course, I will be able to do some longer rides and runs and maybe actually do some longer events. But currently that's not the case. So I'm just focusing on sprint distance. And I feel much happier actually with that decision rather than chasing some unrealistic challenge. Okay, so that's not exactly groundbreaking advice, but in some ways it has been a little for me. I think we're all guilty of occasionally hanging on to some idealistic training method and beating ourselves up when it doesn't go that way or we can't do as much as our peers. Other areas that I am working on and could still do so much better, I'm trying to plan and schedule my training. When I have done this, everything else kind of slots in and works better. I feel prepared, I fuel well, I recover better, and I feel just generally less stressed. Could even be as much as just blocking out the occasional lunch break for a run. Again, something I'm really bad at doing. With this, I can then track my training, progress far better. And obviously I've coached for years, so I know firsthand how important this is, yet I'm currently failing to do this myself at the moment. I'm not really training enough to put myself in a hole right now, but it could so easily be done. And if you aren't tracking your training, fatigue levels, etc., as I say, it could so easily be done. I'm of course at the start of this journey, and I'm sure there will be so many more challenges to come. And I know James will be rolling his eyes with 3 children, but everyone's life is different and has its own challenges. So I guess this is somewhat of a public announcement. You guys are out there absolutely smashing it, so I'd love to hear from you guys. Perhaps you swear by the brick session, maybe you swim at the same time as your child's swim lesson, maybe you use a gym bike whilst you're at work. You name it, share it. We'd love to hear from you, and perhaps we'll share them in the next show. Well, now for the Tri News. T100 have introduced a new Contenders ranking, and to be honest, this isn't something that would immediately seem of importance to you, but actually could completely change the racing you have come to enjoy. So to date, the T100 races have obviously been made up mostly of contracted athletes and then a handful of wildcard athletes. But those wildcard athletes seem to have been a little random and selected, I guess, haphazardly. The plan with the T100 Contenders ranking is to essentially make this a little bit more clear-cut. So here's the score. Any eligible PTO member athlete who is ranked in the PTO World Rankings will be included by default in the T100 Contender Rankings. Athletes who have previously held a T100 contract in 2024 and then declined a new contract for 2025 are ineligible for the T100 Contenders Rankings, apart from those that obviously have had injury or been on maternity. Athletes included in these rankings will be known as Contenders. And then athletes' 5 best scores using the PTO World Ranking system will be used to determine an athlete's T100 Contender ranking, with a maximum of 2 full distance events counted towards the total, and then the 5% bonus of an athlete's single best gold tier or lower race performance still applies for T100 Contender rankings, if that all made sense. So basically it should just give you, or the athletes, I guess, a bit more of a clearer pathway as to what they're trying to aspire to, so that they can get themselves onto the start line of a T100 event. Talking of the T100, they've actually also announced their qualification system for the age group T100 Triathlon World Championships. And of course, the World Championships this year will be held in Qatar later this year. It's nothing groundbreaking, really. Basically, you need to finish in top 10 position within your age category when you take part in a T100 distance event in their World Tour this year. And then also there will be some secondary sort of internal selection process as well by national federations. So there we go. If you're interested in trying to qualify, now you know how to. Now for what's the tech. Now this bit of tech was actually leaked, I think, last year, but here it is officially. It's the PW8 pedal system from Ekoi. Now they've actually been developing this for apparently 4 years, and also had it in testing with some of the professional cyclists and teams for the last couple of years, which is when we kind of got a little sneak peek of it. And I gotta say, it's a completely new system, which actually also requires its own shoe to work with it. Now they've minimized the axle to shoe distance to just 8mm, which I believe is the least out there, but also increased the contact surface of the pedal itself to 1500mm squared. Now, to put this in perspective, most pedals out there are around 705mm squared, so over double the contact surface. Now the cleats weigh around 15 grams per pair, pedals 105 grams per pair, so total weight, pedals and cleats, 225 grams. Now, as I say, it's designed to work with a specific set of shoes. These are the Ekoi C12 Pro full carbon shoes, which actually kind of have 2 locking cleats on the shoes, which I presume you sort of put the foot in, lock in on the first little groove, and then clip down onto the second part. And apparently testing shows 11% reduction in drag. Pretty cool. So the pedal and shoe system are all available for just over £600. Quite interested to try them, if I'm honest. All right, now some of you may have also noticed that Ollie Bridgewood from GTN has been over at the Taipei Cycle Show, and he's compiled a load of the best and hottest tech from this cycle show into a series of videos over on GTN Tech, so do go check them out. But one that caught my eye, and Ollie was actually quick to tell me about in the office earlier, is the L-Twoo Groupset. Now, Ollie got his hands on the ETX rear mech, which actually is primarily designed for off-road use. So it has a clutch in there to allow the chain to sort of stay tensioned. But it also has individual batteries on each part of that group set, which means that you can take them off, and has a USB-C port in there. So you don't have to have any funky sort of charger for it. So it's really quite simple. But what's really cool about it is that it can be set up for 10, 11, 12 speeds. You can basically just program it how you want. So it's really quite versatile, and it's just $100 for that rear mech. And they have some TT shifters that you can pair it with and everything. So really quite impressive. And I gotta say, again, something that I would love to try. Ollie was absolutely buzzing about them and said the build quality was amazing. So watch this space. But now on to the race news, and we had a couple of very big races this weekend. Firstly then, the third stop for the Ironman Pro Series was the much anticipated Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. It was a stacked field for both the men and the women, with the presence of Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Iden making a lot of noise. Now, in the men's race, it was unsurprisingly Greg Harper who led the swim out, who we saw lead out the swim at the 70.3 Worlds. He was joined by a few others, including Casper Storners, Christian Blumenfeld was about a minute down, Patrick Langer 2 minutes down, and Lionel Sanders a little over 3 minutes down. Now, Christian Blumenfeld wasted no time getting himself to the front of the race, but shortly after pulled up due to a flat front tyre, and unfortunately lost around 14 minutes waiting for service course to finally provide him with a replacement wheel. And you would think, given this was an Ironman Pro Series event, that service course would be there ready to go, but I'm sure they'll learn from that. Meanwhile, more athletes had joined the front of the race, including Gustav Iden and Rudy von Berg. Lionel seemed to be chipping away at his deficit, whilst Camworth was having an absolute mare. Not only did his bars come loose, which he held his hands up to being totally his fault, he also got a speeding DQ. As all the athletes entered T2 with Lionel 2:47 down, you might be wondering where Patrick Langer featured in all of this. Well, not at all, actually. Even before the halfway point on the bike, he was over 6 minutes down. In his post on Instagram, he said, "Unfavourable tradition, another rough season opener in Oceanside. This race just doesn't seem to suit me. I tried to prepare for the cold water and took some precautions, but unfortunately, they didn't help much. I was hypothermic during the swim and stayed frozen for the first 90 minutes on the bike. Didn't feel my feet until kilometre 10 in the run." Ouch. And to be fair, he does go on to say that everyone was in the same position, in the same boat, so he doesn't really have any excuses. But anyway, back to the race, and the run was absolutely insane. Lionel Sanders was on the charge. By about 7 miles, he was up with the leaders, Rudy von Berg, Gustav Iden and Seth Ryder, but just continued to inject pace. They all slowly dropped off one by one, while Sanders continued to keep the pedal down, posting a 1:11 run. Rudy von Berg in second, and Gustav Iden in third. And interestingly, Christian Blumenfeld didn't give up after losing 14 minutes on the side of the road. He kept pushing on the run to post a split of 1:07.19, setting a new run course record, which will leave a bit of food for thought for some of his competitors out there. And then in the women's race, it was Steph Clutterbuck that led the swim out, closely followed by race favourite Paula Findlay. And the bike leg saw Jackie Herring making an early effort to bridge up to the leaders. Meanwhile, Findlay actually broke clear of her group, but was then actually passed by Lisa Pekaris in the closing stages. Her lead, though, onto the run didn't last that long, as she was then passed quite swiftly by Jackie Herring and Paula Findlay, with Jackie actually building a 15-second lead through the 3-mile mark. Herring actually continued to hold that advantage for quite a long period of time, to just under 5 miles remaining, when Paula Findlay then managed to time and pace her race to perfection, making the pass on Herring in the late stages and taking the tape. Jackie settled for a hard-fought second, then Danielle Lewis actually ran up to take third. Right, we also had our other big event this weekend, T100 Singapore. And this is the first event in their 2025 series. Now, the conditions themselves are quite a talking point in themselves, with the water temperature around 29 degrees Celsius and air temperature around 30 degrees and humidity through the roof. Now, Jess Learmonth exited the water first, just ahead of Lucy Charles-Barkley, Julie Deron, and Kate Wolf, and even Taylor Spivey in the mix there as well. Impressively, Kate and Jess managed to pull away from the rest of the field, including Lucy Charles-Barkley, putting around 3 minutes into the contenders over the course of the bike. Meanwhile, we had a few people dropping out. Flora Duffy, Indy Lee, Lucy Barham and Mintu Hooker all called it a day during the bike course due to the heat conditions, and we even saw Flora sort of holding a leg as she jumped over a barrier. Now, out of transition, Jess seemed to struggle with cramp, whilst Kate was just on another planet to the rest of the field. She ran away to take the win by over 6 minutes, the biggest T100 winning margin to date. Second went to Lisa Patera, an amazing result actually for her, and Lucy Charles-Barkley stuck it out for third place. Now, the following day in the men's race, Vincent Louis, Max Stapley, Martin Van Riel and Menno Koolhaas were the first out of the water, and around 15 seconds ahead of Leo Berger and Tyler Michalchuk. Then a big chase group of around 10, a further 25 seconds back, including the likes of Rico Bogan and Hayden Wild. Now, there are a lot of changes and moves that went on early on in the bike, but into the final stage of the bike, the head of the race consisted of 3 separate groups. Hayden and Rico off the front, Marjorie and Newt 20 seconds off, and then Berger, Van Riel and Gregory Barnaby holding steady around 16 seconds behind. And then the rest of the field were now over around 2.5 minutes behind. And that is more or less how they all entered transition, other than Marjorie sort of making a move to join the front duo towards the end of the bike. Onto the run, Rico hung with Hayden for the first loop before Hayden asserted his dominance, bumping the pace even more and continued to pull away from the field. Leo Berger ran his way through to second, whilst impressively Martin Van Riel backed up his Ironman South Africa performance from the weekend prior with an amazing third place finish. Also, it sounds like he battled a bit of stomach bug during the week too, so really quite amazing. And also this weekend, we had a new event on the calendar, Challenge Sir Bani Yas. Now, this actually takes place on the island of Sir Bani Yas off of Abu Dhabi. The event captured a lot of attention in the lead up to because, well, it's quite unique. It's on this island, which is home to gazelles, giraffes, hyenas, cheetahs, and much more. And actually, Heather Fell from our channel was out there taking part and filming it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it was all about. It sounds like she had an absolute blast, so stay tuned for that video. But they did have a pro race out there. So that was won by Aurélia Boulanger on the women's side and Jonathan Goulasson on the men's side. We also had the Supertri E World Triathlon Championships taking place this weekend in London at the Aquatic Centre. Now, this is an in-person virtual reality race. Yeah, it's quite weird. But the format of each heat consists of 2 stages, 200 metre pool swim, a 4K ride on My Whoosh, and then a 1 kilometre run also on My Whoosh. So imagine swim in the pool, jump out onto your turbo trainer with My Whoosh in front of you, then run off onto a treadmill with My Whoosh in front of you. It's actually quite cool when you're there in person. But anyway, the top 10 men and top 10 women from the heats will race basically through 3 continuous stages of the swim bike run in the final. And that was won by Cassandra Beaugrand with a close race between herself and Beth Potter. Julia Brooker taking third. On the men's side, it was won by Maxime Huber-Muschbrugger, Chase McQueen taking second, and Marche Brujdiak in third. Now for Tri Spy. Last week we had this photo of a close-up photo of an athlete. And actually we gave away quite a lot. We gave you their nose, both of their eyes. And I gotta say, I instantly got this, but maybe I'm just a bit of a triathlon geek. Surprisingly though, no one got it. Ivan Nano said, "Is that Cat Matthews or am I high?" Cheryl McLachlan said, "This is the first Tri Spy I felt like I'd actually take a guess at. Is that Cat Matthews?" Interesting that a couple of you thought it was Cat Matthews. I'm afraid it was Nicola Spirig. So maybe we fooled you because she's not a current athlete, she's a retired athlete. But anyway, we go again, and we're going to do another athlete. We've punched in a little bit more, but I'll be honest, I think we've gone easy again. So here we go. Do your best. Say what? Okay, right. This week we've got this question from Jack Cannings, which actually, if anything, probably would normally fall into a coach's corner, but I feel like this is a question that many of us have from time to time, and I've definitely had and fallen into the same boat. So he said, hi GTN, question for you guys. I'm currently just over 3 weeks out from 70.3 Valencia, and I'm in the peak weeks of my training. This week I had quite a bad bike crash, and I've got lots of bruises, scrapes and grazes, plus a small fracture on my thumb. I wanted to know what your advice would be for these next few weeks before race day. I'm aware that the remainder of this week and next week should be training hard before tapering down. However, is it better to recover and do minimal training to make sure I'm fully fit for race day? FYI, I'm training to a time goal of sub 5 hours. Okay, so you may not have crashed and fractured your thumb or whatever, but I think most of us at some point will find ourselves in the position of potentially being ill a few weeks out from a race, or something just happens and everything's thrown up in the air. So I thought I'd tackle this today in the show. Now, obviously, everyone's position or situation is unique, but what I would say is do not destroy yourself to try and train through an injury. Probably do allow yourself that time to recover. Yes, you are going to have to sort of change the structure, and you're probably not going to necessarily want to follow that normal structure of just doing a traditional taper the week or two leading out from the race. Allow yourself that time now just to recover, and then probably just throw in a few kind of shorter, spicy sessions just to get your body fired up and ready for the race in the last week or two before. So yeah, it's going to take a little bit of adapting to your training and changing, but yeah, good question. And if anyone else is doing 7.3 Valencia, let us know in the comment section down below, because yeah, that is one of the big races coming up in a few weeks time, and I know a lot of people out there are doing it. So yeah, best of luck to you. Coming up on the channel this week, we have actually got a really cool video with the On Academy, which is a really neat program set up to basically support some young athletes that are coming through in the sport. And I got a sneak peek basically at that academy over in Mallorca, so stay tuned for that. And also, James has been busy out at the Ironman South Africa Pro Series event, but filming also a charity video with Ironman for Kids, which, well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing. So stay tuned.